Hello and welcome to the Shinybees podcast, a podcast for those that like their knitting, comedy and yarn in equally large measures. I'm your host Jo Milmine, and coming up in today's show we have Enabler's Corner, we have an interview with British designer Louise Tilbrook, and the sock surgery returns with some toe-up sock tips to finish off the month. Hello everybody and welcome to episode 38 of the podcast. How are you all? I hope you've been well since the last time I spoke to you. This week we've got a venerable mishmash of our usual segments to bring to you. For all of those of you who are on the come down still from the madness that was at Edinburgh Yarn Festival, there's a little bit of chat about that in Enabler's Corner. Then we'll move swiftly on to an interview with one of my favourite sock designers, Louise Tilbrook. And we'll follow that up with a few toe-up sock tips to finish up the month in the sock surgery with Clare. So get yourself a rooibos or a gin and tonic, depending on what time of the day it is at the moment where you are in the world, and let's crack on with the show. Oh, I do love a little bit of enabling, and I'm back again with a little rundown of things that I may have purchased at Edinburgh Yarn Festival and things I may have received as beautiful birthday gifts at Edinburgh Yarn Festival, as well as the odd one or two thing that may pop in regarding things I've seen that I think you might like. I'm going to save the main post-mortem for Edinburgh, if you will, until the next episode when I can fully collect all of my thoughts together. It has been a pretty busy week. Lots of things been happening at Shiny Heights, and I don't think I've fully managed to process all of the stuff that has gone on and since Edinburgh Yarn Festival. For those of you that I saw and got to meet in real life, it was an absolute pleasure. Thank you for coming to say hello to me. For those of you who just looked at me as if to say I think that's Jo from Shinybees, but I'm too scared to say hello, and she isn't being kind enough to be wearing her Shinybees Ravelry badge because she forgot it. But I probably waved at you and said hello vaguely. Hello. And for those of you that I may have mistakenly thought that I'd met before, because you're actually one of the models in Kate Davis's Yolks book, yes, that's you, Mel. And I said hello to you like I'd known you for 100 years, and had a full-on conversation before realising halfway through a conversation with somebody else that I hadn't ever, in fact, met you. I'd heard about you from Kate and had seen you in the Yolks book and thought that I had met you because of that. Lovely to meet you actually, Mel. For anyone that I didn't get to see, I'm very, very sorry to have missed you. It was very busy, and I know a lot of you were, busy, hard at work, doing your shopping and having a look around and talking to your favourite vendors. So if I did miss you, hopefully we'll get to meet again at another event. Please do just stop me if you see me wandering around like a crazy at knitting events, because I absolutely love to chat to you all. In terms of acquisitions then to the Shinybees household, I kept the yarn buying down to a very, very respectable level, and that is mostly because I'm just a little bit maxed out with the yarn at the moment. That's not in a showy-offy way, it's just in a I really want to knit some of it way, and there's been a lot of yarns that have come into the household, and not enough have gone out at this stage, so I was just feeling a little bit critical stash, shall we call it. I'll talk about critical stash next time as a theoretical, physical, philosophical concept, I think, because I do have some thoughts on critical stash. But what I did buy for my very own self was a blanket from Knockando Woolmill, which was woven in the Woolmill itself, and it is a Shetland pattern. It's all different colours of squares. I will see if I can put a little linky in the show notes to Knockando, to the shop at Knockando. It is opening again actually today. It's a little Woolmill that's been renovated and saved from extinction, if you will. It is one of the oldest surviving working mills of its kind in Scotland, and it was all but derelict until the trust got together and raised a lot of money to renovate it, which they have done, and it won some prizes actually for architectural merit and the work that had been done there. They use Victorian machinery, the original machinery that was in there, to produce knitting yarns and blankets and tweeds, as well as a range of other sort of goods, and all of the profits from that go back into supporting the Woolmill. We all know how much of a fan of that concept I am after my small accident at New Lanark Mill, hence the critical stash problem that I'm having at the moment. And I decided that instead of getting some yarn, and there were some beautiful yarns available, they spin Norwegian Dalla, which isn't a UK breed, it is obviously Norwegian, but they spin that on their machinery, and Helen Lockhart at Ripples Crafts, who is up in the Highlands of Scotland, she hand dyes some of that yarn for them to sell. They also had that at Edinburgh Yarn Festival. I did go and have a good old squidge of that. But I've been looking for a woolen blanket for a while for the house. I've looked at several places, Johnston's Cashmere being one of them in Elgin, and Knockando being the other. And I went and had a little pot around and a look, and it seemed like quite a good opportunity to see the goods in person, because the Woolmill closes over winter. And spotted this blanket, had a little look at it, and decided to buy it. So I got that, along with a little lavender bag made out of the same woolen fabric to keep my blanket nice and safe in the summer months. And I also went along and had a look at Whistlebare Yarns, who are a firm based in Northumberland in the UK, so bordering one of the border counties with Scotland. It's an English county, and I used to live in Northumberland in Alnwick, and I decided to have a look at their yarns, because it looked like it was something a little bit different. I did buy some yarn at this point, and it was the DK weight yarn, and it is a blend of 60% mohair from their own goats and 40% Wensleydale from, I think one of her sons has a Wensleydale flock, and she buys the fleece from him and has that also spun into the yarn. It is a DK weight and knits up pretty much as such, but it doesn't feel like it's quite a thin yarn. It feels more like a 4-ply, but it's very heavy because of the mohair content. And I bought 4 skeins of that to make another Lush Mark 4. I've got all this yarn lined up for Lushes and not managing to knit any of them at the moment. So I'm going to have a little swatch with that, see how it washes when it comes, once it's been washed and blocked, see how it comes up then, to see if I can make it work for the Lush cardigan. I've seen Louise Scolley's Wensleydale long wool sheep shop version, and it's really shiny and silky but quite thin feeling compared to my big floofy Blacker Swan version. I thought it'd be quite nice to have one like that. It looks quite silky, and mohair's really good in terms of, it's probably about twice as warm as merino. So I thought, I could do that, be a nice light cardigan to wear, but will have a lot of good thermal properties. So the yarns are all spun in the UK, and then they are also hand dyed on their farm. So I'll put a link in the show notes if you want to go and check out their offering. I haven't seen them around at many shows. It was just that one, just one other time I think, other than this time. And because I didn't have much mohair in the old stasharoonie, I thought I would indulge a little bit this time. I also got some lovely gifts from my lovely knitty friends for my birthday, including a couple of yolks bags, which are, I can vouch for now, the sturdiness of the gusset on the yolks bag, which are available from shopkdd.com. They are the bags that I've mentioned before that have a hand drawing of all of the patterns from yoke on the front that Felix Ford has drawn. So I make good use of both of those. I got some beautiful Corriedale yarn from Coach House Yarns Linda, who gave me a skein of her Swiss Army base, which is 100% Corriedale, in the colourway Labyrinth, which I'm now using as my desk pomander, my pomander yarn, for me to sniff when the yarn fumes are getting a little bit low and I'm hard at work. And it is beautiful. I cannot wait to cast that on and knit it up. It's very crunchy and bouncy and looks like it's going to be great fun. From my lovely friend Knit British, I got a mug with Shinybees on one side and It's a Spade on the other, which I thought was very apt. Amongst other lovely gifts from Tilly Flop, and I got some lovely hand cream and some gin, and I was very, very spoiled. So thank you to all of you who He thoughtfully sent me gifts. They were not necessary, but they are incredibly highly appreciated. So I think it's time to ease back on the enabling a little bit, and we'll pop over to listen to Louise Tilbrook and welcome her to the show and listen to her interview about all things yarny and business. So I am very pleased today to be welcoming Louise Tilbrook to the show. How are you, Louise?
I'm fine, thank you.
Brilliant. So Louise is a sock designer and is based in the UK, and I've invited her on the show today to come and do an interview with us. So for those who are not familiar with you, Louise, can you tell us a little bit about your background and how you came to be interested in yarny pursuits?
Well, I've been knitting now for a good few years. I was taught by my grandma, I think like so many of us are. So I knit a little as a child. And then as a teenager and a student, I had other things to do and didn't knit. And then I picked it up again probably about 5 or 6 years ago. And I think it was when Ravelry was just starting, and I discovered that there was a whole online community of knitters, and just generally got started on sweaters and scarves and usual things. And then through Ravelry, I got into sock knitting and got addicted to socks and sock yarn and lovely hand-painted designer yarn. And then, just gradually got more and more interested in design and sock design specifically. So I started to make a range of designs, mainly unisex, and with a strong focus on cables. I like knitting for my husband and my family members, most of whom are men and most of whom have very large feet. And I found that a lot of the knitting patterns on Ravelry were very were more female orientated. There's some beautiful, lots of beautiful lace patterns, but not so much that involved cables or texture. So that's what I tended to focus on, really. And it's just grown from there.
Oh, brilliant, because a lot of your designs also knit both ways as well, which is something I find quite interesting. Is there any particular reason you decided to do that?
Partly because when I'm designing, I tend to design toe up. I think like most people, I learned to knit socks cuff down to start with. And for a few years, that's what I did, socks on double pointed needles, cuff down. And then I got into magic loop. And for me, magic loop, I work much better toe up. It just seems more intuitive, particularly when I'm designing as well. It's you can start a toe up sock and that's your swatch, really. You can sort of try it on as you go, and you can play around with the design on the top of the foot until you're happy with it. So toe up seemed to make sense to me. But from a purely commercial point of view, looking on Ravelry, I don't know the exact numbers, but the majority of socks are cuff down, and that seems to be what a lot of knitters are comfortable with. So given that I'd already designed the sock toe up, it didn't take, it's not that much work really to rejig it to go cuff down. And having done that work, it seemed sensible just to offer the pattern in both formats. Obviously, some designs don't really work. Some work in one direction more than the other. And some of my earlier designs, I just did toe up. I didn't offer a cuff down version. But now I'm going back through with the help of a few lovely test knitters. So I'm going back through my back catalogue, and just a few that were exclusively toe up and cuff down as well, just to kind of just so it all matches. But I say that there are one or two that are just one direction or the other. But I've had a lot of good feedback from people. A lot of knitters like that it's offered in both formats, and I've had a few people who bought the design and knit the cuff down version, and then they've been inspired to try the toe up version as well. So they've knit the same design but two ways. It's good. It's nice to have that feedback, and it's nice that people like it.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's quite good because it just as well, it gives you the feeling that you are thinking about all of the people that are knitting it, and you feel like you're getting something extra that you could try that maybe you wouldn't necessarily go for
Mm.
to start with, like you said. So
Yeah, I think people who haven't tried toe sock knitting before are maybe a little nervous, or they're a bit unsure of it. And I think because they've got the pattern in two formats, it gives them a bit more reassurance. That they can sort of learn those skills just focusing on the toe up bit, because they've already done that cable pattern, or they've done that design, and that bit's familiar to them. So yeah, it's good. And it doesn't really involve, some people have sort of said, oh, does it involve a lot more work? But it doesn't really. It's you still got to do the charts, and you've got to do, each each bit of the design. You still got to do it whether you're doing toe up or cuff down. So it's just a bit of extra work on the computer, and you've got two for the price of one.
yeah, definitely. So what was the tipping point then that turned your hobby and designing socks that you thought your husband and your family members would like into more of a business venture?
Um, I think again it was probably the feedback I got on Ravelry. Just sort of putting designs out there, and the fact that people liked them and wanted to knit them. It was a good it was a good experience, actually. I had a lot of people contact me and say that they like my designs. I still consider myself very much a sort of a starting out designer. I don't really consider myself very established. Certainly not when I look at all the other sort of sock gurus out there. But I'm just happy to kind of poodle on and grow my business slowly. I say I still work professionally as well. So I'm a scientist by day and sock knitter by night. So there's only so much designing I can fit into a working week anyway. So for the minute, I'm kind of content just to go slow and steady, and just focus on putting designs out there that I like and I like to knit, and hopefully others like to knit them as well.
Absolutely. Do you find that any of your skills from your science background translate into designing patterns?
Um, I'm probably quite I'm quite methodical, quite scientific. So I suppose when I approach a pattern, when I'm writing a pattern, I'm probably quite methodical in how I do that. And I think I have had some people comment that they like the way that my patterns are logical, and they sort of, the way they progress through. So I guess part of that is just my background. But other than that, no, I think I think designing is something I do to kind of escape my day job. I'm not sure it really complements it that much, and it is nice for me. It's nice to have a balance. It's nice to have something that allows me to be more creative. Having spent several years now as a scientist in the health service, doesn't give you an awful lot of scope for creativity, and not a huge amount of capacity for fun. Whereas knitting and designing, and being able to meet so many people through Ravelry and knitting events, it really brings an extra dimension to things, which is what I really enjoy.
So, what does the average day look like then for you?
It's a real mixture, really. As I say, I work outside the home, so on days when I'm working, it's the usual, sort of kids, school run, work. And I normally try and squeeze in little bits of knitting as and when I can. And then when I get home in the evenings and the kids have gone to bed, then I can usually do a little more. To be honest, I'm much more of a morning person. Once it gets past about 10 o'clock, I'm pretty much brain dead, to be honest. So most of my work, if I've got something important I need to do, or pattern writing or anything like that, then I tend to get up early in the morning before the kids are up, get it done then. And then on days when I'm not working, I try and cram in as many jobs as I possibly can. I normally try and do a little bit of design work every day, even if it's just a few minutes, or a little bit of pattern writing, and just try and spread it out as much as I can. I don't tend to do, most of my work tends to be self-published at the moment. I do some commission work for magazines, but most of it tends to be self-published just because you have a bit more control over deadlines, and particularly with not being a full-time designer. You don't have as much control over your working week, over your design working week as you'd like. So it's, for me at the minute, it's better just to kind of focus on what I know I can do and not give myself too many deadlines and too much pressure. There's nothing worse than sort of, a looming deadline and the fact that, you've got to go to work and you've got to get the kids to school and you've got to do all the usual things. And you don't have time to spend as you'd like on the design. You don't have time to do it as well as you'd like. Yes, so for the moment, it's just a matter of little and often, and just trying to keep new designs coming, really.
Yeah, there's nothing kills creativity more than a massive amount of pressure.
No, that's right, and the feeling that you've got to produce something that's that's different, that's striking, that's beautiful, and trying to do that to order is the bit that I find really hard. I try and kind of spend time, if I come across a new idea or a new stitch pattern or something, I spend a bit of time swatching and making a note of it. But I like to be able to allow time for things to develop organically rather than having to force them too much.
No, brilliant. So can you talk us through, because you've alluded to different parts of the process as we've been talking about it. Mm-hmm. Do you have a set process when you design a sock? And if you do, can you talk us through how you go about it?
I tend to, I generally start with the yarn. So I'll find a yarn that really appeals to me, either the colour or the twist, or something that really makes me want to knit it, and then I'll just have a play with stitch patterns. I do like a nice cable and twisted stitches as well. So that tends to be what I focus on. So I'll start with that, and then, as I say, I design toe up primarily. So I'll start doing a few little toe up swatches just to see how it works, and how the design might flow. It does mean that in every room in my house you go in, you'll find a little toe of a sock somewhere looking around. My husband jokes, there's so many pieces of knitting. You go into a room and on at least 2 or 3 services, I'm sure you'll find a little piece of knitting or a toe or something. But it's handy just to be able to pick them up and just work on them, and just try things out, really. So I'll do that to start with until I've got something that I like, and then I'll knit up a sample, and then I have my I have a Ravelry group, and I have a lovely bunch of people on there who like to test knit for me. So I'll do some testing, and I normally knit the toe up version, and then write the cuff down version and just do a sample of that. And then I have my intrepid band of test knitters who'll just make sure that I've got all my numbers right, and then obviously my tech editor as well, and then we go from there. So some designs sort of come together really quickly, some take a little longer, and some just, no matter how hard you try, you just can't. The toe up version, for example, works perfectly, but I just can't get the same flow through the cuff down version. So 1 or 2, I don't do that for, because I don't want to I don't want to feel that I have to do that for every pattern. I don't want to try and force it if it really doesn't work. My bugbear is always when you have like the ribbing at the cuff of a sock and it doesn't really flow into the main body of the design. I always find it a bit jarring if you have a beautiful, cable pattern or something like that, and then you just have a little 1x1 rib sort of stuck on the top. It just doesn't seem to work. So if I can't get it to work, I don't. I'll just focus on the toe-up version.
So no journey is ever smooth, and running a business has its ups and downs. Can you tell us about a time when things maybe didn't quite go to plan? What happened, and what did you learn as a result of it?
I think when I was first starting to submit designs to publications, I submitted a design that I'd done, and there was quite a long time lag between it. Obviously, at the time I didn't realise quite how long it was between submitting a design and having to produce finished samples. Being a sort of newbie designer, I hadn't appreciated the value of keeping extensive notes on your design. So I found myself having to re-knit a large amount of the sample to get it to work how the original did. And obviously with a looming deadline, and the fact that I had to produce these socks was really quite stressful, and really I just really wished it would have been so much easier had I just kept good notes as I went along the first time. And I thought I had. I thought I'd done sufficient, but obviously I hadn't, and it was very difficult to kind of reproduce the design from the original. So I ended up having to do a lot of it on the fly. So that was my learning point, was to keep good notes. And so ever since then, I've always kept a particular journal that I keep all my notes in, and I am very good at literally line by row by row as I'm doing it. Then I'll make sure I've got good notes as well, so I can go back and reproduce it. But yeah, I think it's one of those things, you do it once and you learn, and then you don't do it again.
Yeah, absolutely. It's easy to get carried away, isn't it, as well? You get all excited, you get it done, and then...
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you just get a bit carried away with how beautiful it looks, and it's all going swimmingly, and and then you come back to look at it, and you look at the sort of the detail of it, and trying to work out exactly how many pearl stitches were there between that cable. It just adds an extra level of headache that you can do without when you're up against it. So yeah, keep good notes would be my learning point.
Yeah, and it's pretty important for our business, to be fair, in terms of record keeping and stuff. It's probably not that exciting or glamorous, but it is essential. No.
It's like all these things, I think, isn't it? There's the as a designer, I have this mental image of, I sort of I waft about, and I work with beautiful yarns, and I produce these lovely patterns, and it's lovely. But then, like I said, there's all the sort of the stuff that goes on in the background about keeping good notes and making sure that people can follow what you've done. And it's all the little details that make the difference, really.
Yeah. So which other knitwear designers inspire you, and why?
I think probably Cookie A is the sock designer who really inspired my love of socks. I've knit several pairs of monkey socks, I think, like everybody else. But I love I love the way she plays with the architecture of a design, and the fact that you look at something and you think it's quite straightforward, and then you look at how she's actually created the pattern and how she's got it to move around the foot. I think is really I think she sees sock design differently to a lot of people, I think, and I love that. I love that playing with texture and shape that she does. And I think probably the other designer that inspired me is Rachel Coopy as well. Coop Knits. Her sock designs are just so beautiful and really sort of timeless and classic. I think they're. I love the way that her designs seem to appeal to so many people. She really has such a great range, and a great portfolio. But yeah, I just like her work. I'm just a bit of a fangirl.
It's cool. Everyone has to fangirl somebody. Have you got like an all-time favourite sock pattern?
I think it probably would be very unoriginally. I think probably the monkey socks, actually. They're, yeah, I've knit them for myself. I've knit them as gifts for people. I've knit the no pearl version as well, which is sort of a fun way of doing them. But yeah, it's just you can see why they're so popular. I think once you get the stitch pattern in your head, you just whiz along, and they work equally well in variegated or solid yarns. I think it's one of those rare designs that seems to work well with whatever yarn you're using.
Yeah, because that can be a massive challenge, I think, at times when you think something's going to work with a pattern. And it's just not always the case. And you can go for the safe option of a solid or semi-solid in anything and get away with it. But when it comes to like the pretty variegated yarns, which generally do tend to be sock suitable, and you want to showcase them, it can be difficult to find a suitable pattern, I think.
Yeah, I think another good one is probably something like Hermione's everyday sock. I mean, that always seems to work well with the more sort of brightly coloured yarns as well. I've seen some really beautiful ones that people have done with yarns that might otherwise pool, or you get problems with sort of patches of colour. So I think that probably be my second favourite. I think would be the Hermione socks.
Good choice. So, moving on from your favourite socks then, which one thing that you know now did you wish you had known when you first picked up a ball of yarn?
Oh, good grief. I think I had no idea the whole world of knitting that was out there. I think I still when I got back into knitting again, I thought knitting was kind of you just knit from magazines or patterns. You went to. I have very vivid memories of as a child. You would go to the wool shop and you would buy your wool and the pattern to go with it and the needles, and you would take them home and you would knit that pattern. Often in that colour. Yeah, exactly as it was on the pattern cover. I think I just had no idea how the range of yarn that was available, and I don't know how to phrase it, just the whole community. I think the fact that it is all encompassing, and the more you find out about it, the more you want to learn, and the fact that there's a whole community of people out there who think just like you do. So yeah, I don't know many knitters certainly not in my day job. I know a few socially, but not many. But yeah, just the whole community and the whole friendliness of it, really. The fact that you can walk to a knitting festival and strike up a conversation with just about anybody is lovely. But I think what I'm trying to say is that I just really like the fact that you're as a knitter, you're not alone. You've always got this kind of big community of people behind you, and if you're having problems with a particular design, or you can't get gauge or whatever, there's a whole load of people there who can help you. I wish I'd known how much time it would take up, but then again, at the same time, I don't regret it at all, because I love what I do. I love knitting. And I think there's a lot more things you could be wasting your time on. I think at least I'm doing something productive. I'm achieving something, even on the most stressful of days where I just think everything has gone to pot, and my children are going feral, and the house is and the house is a tip, and I haven't done anything, and I'm useless, and I just think, actually no, but I've turned the heel of a sock, or I did I did something else, and then that sort of gives you a sense of achievement and the fact that you have actually done something productive. I think my husband would probably disagree. I think he'd probably wish that he could have all the space under the bed back, because it's currently occupied by my boxes of stash. I think he certainly had no idea how much I would take to knitting again. But at the same time, he's happy that I'm happy doing what I'm doing. And as we speak, he's in Paris, hopefully scouring yarn shops for me. So that would be nice.
It is, and this is it. You see, it's not a solitary sport, knitting. You were all upset on Twitter that you weren't going to be able to attend the Muse Connection, and then within a matter of minutes, we had a range of Parisian yarn shops for your husband to go to ease the blow.
That was so funny. My husband couldn't believe me that. Because I jokingly kind of sent him an email, and I put the location of the shop. We have like a shared online calendar that we use, so I made sure the address of the shop was in there, and then he sort of he kind of said, "Oh, while I'm there, perhaps I'll see if I can find you, a yarn shop." And I thought, "Oh, it's funny you should mention that, because there's one, you're in the." I think he's in the 13th arrondissement, and the shop is in the 14th. So it's really not too far from you, So if you're planning a walk or whatever, and he looked at me, he was like, "Are you joking? Do you actually know there's a yarn shop there?" And I said, "Yeah, I do." So I pointed it out and I showed him, and he just sort of shook his head and was like, "Oh, knitters." And knitters will rule the world eventually with their powers of organisation.
It's because they have a beautiful Instagram account. It's I can't pronounce it very well. Lucivite?
Oh, Daddy said.
I don't know. The Tea Cafe. I call it the Tea Cafe because I can't pronounce it properly.
Yes, no, I think it was through Instagram that I saw them, actually, because those beautiful photographs. It might have been through Curious Handmade, actually. I think she organised a Parisian yarn trip a little while ago. I think she may have gone there. But yeah, I just love their pictures. And having said that, it's now Wednesday and he's due back tomorrow, and I'm not sure he's actually been to the shop yet. So I shall be emailing him later to see if he has or not.
Just lock him out. If he doesn't post yarn through the letterbox, don't let him in.
That's a good point. Get him to frisk him at Heathrow and see what he's got.
It's like you're not coming unless you brought me yarn. You're not coming in. That's it. I also had this conversation with my husband, who's away in America at the moment, and he was talking about what I would like, and I said, "It's okay. I've already spoken to Maria of Subway Knits, and these are the yarn companies, and there's this shop in Washington, and what." So, and he's quite good because he gets to sample a lot of the yarns when they come in, and he sniffs them and things. He goes through the whole rigmarole. He's been briefed on the protocols required for new yarns coming into the house. So he's pretty good. I'm quietly confident I'm going to get something decent.
Oh, you've got him well trained.
Yeah, he's good. He helps me pack up all the golden skein parcels as well. So he knows about everybody. Yeah, I was telling the story of each person when he reads the name out. I'm like, blah, 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 they do this, they do that, they do that. So he likes it. So speaking of wool then, in particular, desert island skeins. If you were going to be marooned on a desert island, and this is probably quite pertinent for you because you knit very quickly, and you could only take just one, Louise, skein or ball of yarn, which would you take and why?
Oh gosh, I think I'd just have to take a skein of. I guess it would have to be lace weight, just so you get maximum knitting yardage out of it. I think something fairly robust, something like a silk blend or something like that, and then it would stand being ripped and re-knit a few times, so that while you were waiting for your rescue, you could have plenty of knitting opportunities. So I think something that's probably at least 1,000 yards of silk lace weight, and then you could knit yourself a fabulous sarong. A little bit of beachwear, so that when you're rescued, you've got something glamorous to wear.
That's the main thing, really, isn't it? Because you don't want to be stood there in tatters. Or you could have some really nice silk socks.
This is true. This is true. But I think, yeah, I think I'd go for something sort of light and drapey. And
I was busy thinking how you could fish. You could use some of the yarn to fish with because it's lace weight and it's silk's quite strong.
you could, yeah, your stole could double as a kind of as a fishing net, couldn't it? You could, yeah, and then you could catch fish and then wear it to look glamorous later on.
You'd definitely need some sock wash as well, then, wouldn't you?
You would, yeah. Otherwise, you might, yeah. Not a good combination, perhaps.
No, I'm sure they would sponsor it though, like a desert island sponsored by Soak. Oh, crazy. Definitely time for another cup of tea. So, what is your favourite go-to resource for yarn craft or business that you couldn't do without?
Oh, do you know, I really struggled with this question because, I think like everyone, Ravelry is my main. I spend a lot of my time, probably too much time, on Ravelry. But it really is the most fabulous resource for just connecting with friends, with customers, with other designers. It's a brilliant place, and I love that they're so responsive to to the users. I love just this week. I think Casey's done something with the formatting of the forum, so that when you look at it on your smartphone, you don't have to do all the kind of zooming in that you had to do before. It's changed the layout, which is it was brilliant for something that's free to use. I think it's just amazing. I think if I didn't pick Ravelry, I'd probably say Instagram. Again, I used it a little to start with, but I've started to use it more and more. And again, I just love the way it connects you to so many different people. And you can see what they're knitting. It's a bit more. I like Twitter, but sometimes you're restricted by the number of characters, and you can't. I find it harder to have a conversation with people on Twitter, whereas Instagram, I think it's really visual. It's really quick. It's a really good little snapshot into what everyone's working on. But yeah, I think I would have to say Ravelry. I think as my number one.
Yeah, absolutely. But then that's why so many people say it, because I don't think any of us would really know about each other or have that community aspect without it, because the chances that you would just randomly have come across each other on Twitter.
Well, that's right. It's such a big place, isn't it? And it's such a diverse group of people. And I know people always try and describe to non-knitters. You try and describe Ravelry, and you try and say, "Oh, it's like Facebook for knitters or whatever." But that doesn't even come close, does it? It's nowhere near. Doesn't really encompass everything that it does. And I like the way that people use Ravelry for different things. You have some people literally just use it as a source of patterns. Some people, are really active and use it for chat forums and all kinds of things. And it can be whatever you want it to be, really. And I think you can use it, as much or as little as you like. And I love the way that you can have been using it for years and still find features that are new to you that you didn't know it did. That's probably why I spend so much time on there.
Absolutely. And like you say, it is a free pattern, because I don't know, I sometimes get quite annoyed by people who have this sense of entitlement when it comes to Ravelry, about how it should be this, that and the other, and the minute it's not exactly how they want it, they feel that they have the facility, thanks to Casey, to vent about it on Ravelry. But like you've rightly said there, they are quite responsive to the needs and wants of their community, and they seem to work very hard to try and accommodate them for something that costs nothing to use and is very cheap to sell your patterns on and advertise on.
No, absolutely. I think, like you say, sometimes I think people do forget that it is just Casey and a very small team of people. And yeah, I think one thing that illustrates it was the whole issue about the EU VAT saga, and how something which Ravelry is obviously it's international, but there's a large sort of American and North American population of users, and something that just affects something that happens in the EU obviously affected everybody. And I think it was just amazing the way that Casey and his team kind of stepped in and worked with Love Knitting to solve the problems of a small number of designers, and make it so that essentially things are the way they were before. The person buying the pattern doesn't really, they might have an extra step or two to go through, but it makes the whole thing as seamless as possible. And you didn't have to do that. And I know obviously that's how they make their business, is by designers selling patterns and through advertising. But to do that and to do it at the speed they did it over Christmas and New Year, when certainly in the UK, I don't think anyone was working in the government tax offices over that time. But yet Casey and the team and the Love Knitting team were hard at work trying to put something in place that would work.
It was a little bit of a shocker, I think, for a lot of people, other than KD, who had it all nailed, clearly, with her awesome accountant. But everyone else was a bit sort of, I don't know, I think the more upsetting thing is not the fact they want you to pay that, it's more they don't seem to know what they want you to pay it for.
Well, exactly.
It's like, if you can't make up your mind, how can I pay a bill when you don't even know what you want?
Yeah, I think it's the fact that oh no, this will only affect a very small number of people, and then actually, well, no, it affects if you look at all the possible digital services there are, that affects an awful lot of people, and we're not all businesses with teams of staff and everything else. We're just one person. Although certainly after listening to the KD interview, I was sort of thinking about maybe I should get myself an accountant, because it does seem like it might be a good thing to do.
I think, as I've said before, it's just flawed when you write legislation that far in advance and then don't update it in something like the digital economy. It's never going to go that well.
Well, exactly. Things move so quickly, don't they? And the EU is renowned for moving not very quickly. So.
I know, and they're talking about putting it on actual products in 2016, but that's a whole other discussion, and hence why I've got an accountant. Moving on swiftly from Vatmos and blood pressure issues on this side of the conversation, at least, where can the listeners find you?
Well, so I've talked about Ravelry a lot, but obviously I have a group on Ravelry where I'm Louise Tilbrook Designs. I have a Facebook page as well, same name, and I have an Instagram account that I use quite a lot, probably more than I should. So I'm Louise Tilbrook Designs on there as well, and also on Twitter.
Brilliant, because your group is quite friendly as well. I'm in your group, and they are all lovely. They're very chatty and nice.
Yeah, it's again, it's kind of grown. It's grown slowly, but yeah, it's lovely. We've got a real mix of people. We've got people from a variety of countries now, and it's nice just to kind of chat to people. Obviously, we're all heavily into the socks, and we like to sort of chat about that a lot. But also, just general things. We've got a few of us meeting up in Brighton. I forgot the date now. I think it's the end of March. There's a new yarn shop opened in Brighton, Yarn and Knitting, and one or two of our group members live down in Brighton, so we're going to be catching the train and having a day out down there and meeting a few people, which will be really nice. I'm really looking forward to that. Tea cake and yarn shopping is always a good combination. But no, it's nice. It's grown. As I say, I like the fact that it's kind of grown over time. We've gradually got new members, and it's good fun. Just adds to the adds to the enjoyment. It's nice when people knit your designs, but it's also nice when you get to know people as well, and you get to know you get to know what they like and what makes them tick, and it's just a good fun bunch of people.
So do you have any sort of parting words of advice for those people who would maybe like to get into the industry or are considering in starting to design stuff themselves?
I think I would just say go for it, actually. Just have a go. I mean, what's the worst that can happen? I think it's always quite difficult, certainly to start with, putting your work out there and making it available for people. But if people like it, then that's fabulous. If they don't, you might get some constructive feedback, and you might give you an incentive to try something different. I would just have a go, see what happens. Like you say, nothing ventured, nothing gained, and I think it's just one of those. I think again about Ravelry, it is such a supportive community, and I think you find that if you do dip your toe in the water and have a go, people really like that. People applaud it, and like to see new people coming along. They like to get a sense of new designers, and they like to be able to support new designers as well. And certainly I've found that I do have a few people who are really really loyal customers. As soon as I put patterns out, they buy them, and they tell other people, and they're like a little one-person advertising band almost, and that's really lovely. So they don't have to do that, but I think you might be surprised at how receptive people are, and how keen they are to promote new designers.
Brilliant. So what's next then for Louise Tilbrook Designs? What's on the horizon that we can all get a little bit excited about?
Lots more socks, I think. I'm just in the process of, I've just released a design called Seat Holler Socks, which is the first one of a series. People who follow me on Ravelry or Instagram would know that I'm a big fan of the Lake District, and we take a few family holidays there every year. My boys are getting into mountain walking, so we do a lot of walking as a family. So I'm designing a series of socks based on a Lakeland walk. So we started off in Seat Holler, which is a nice, pretty little village, and then we're going to go up. The next one coming out soon is called Coombe Gill. So that's going to be a waterfall, based on a waterfall that you see on the way up to the summit of a mountain called Glaramara. So that'll be the third sock. And then, like all good country walks, ends in a. So there'll be a fourth sock pattern inspired by a local pub. And obviously I've taken photos and got pictures from along the way as well. So you can knit the socks from the comfort of your armchair and enjoy a Lakeland walk at the same time.
Oh, fantastic. Do you do geocaching with your kids?
We do a bit, yeah. It started out as a way of enticing them to walk. Cruel mummy that I am. It was jelly beans and geocaching for quite a while, just to try. They've walked with us since they were about 3 or 4. So we're quite lucky in that our boys are very close in age, so they've always been able to walk the same distance as each other. But in the early days, it was very good to have a few points of interest along the walk, something to kind of get them, over that next stile or up to that tarn or whatever it was. And we still do it a little bit now. But now my boys are very much focused on, they want to be at the summit. They want to kind of get the obligatory glamour shot of them looking all macho-like on a mountain summit. But yeah, I like geocaching. Actually, it's good fun. It's always funny though when you, particularly if you're in a very popular area, and you approach the point that you think the geocache is in. You can see another family scuffling around as well. So you're sort of hovering and always queuing so that you get to go and discover the cache for yourself. But yeah, but you geocache a bit, don't you? I think.
Yeah. Kate and I used to do it a lot. We used to go on holidays called Cash and Lash before I had the children, and only one dog. We would book a little cottage and go on Cash and Lash for the week, which basically involved geocaching in the day and the lash at evening, as in drinking wine, nothing at all kinky. but we had some massive crazy adventures, including one that I forgot to mention, and she reminded me of the other day, where we were geocaching. I think we might have even been in Wigan or near Wigan, and we went to find this geocache, and it was under a dead fox. So there was this dead fox there, and it had these teeth sticking out because it was rigor mortis. But one of my dogs, we think he broke his jaw once. My mum was looking after him. He ran into a pole, so his teeth stick out all the time, and it looked just like Bowsy, but it was a dead fox because they look very foxy, the dogs as well. So we had to get this like branch and lift the fox up so we could get the cache out, because we weren't going that far and not getting the geocache. And yeah, it was under a dead fox, and we had to place the fox back because you have to leave the geocaches exactly as you find them. So we had to then put it back under the fox. So yeah, it's quite funny. Brilliant. I know, honestly, couldn't make it up, this stuff. Couldn't make it up. Right, well, on that fox-filled note, what does the fox say? Not a lot, clearly. Thank you very much for your time, Louise, and for coming onto the show and entertaining us all today. And we'll look forward to your new designs soon.
Thank you.
So I'm pleased to welcome back Clare again to the Sock Surgery. Welcome back to the show, Clare.
Hello.
And we are going to be talking today about knitting toe-up socks. So Clare, the floor is yours. Take it away.
Right, so I thought I would share a few hints and tips just as a roundup, because I know so many of you have already finished your toe-up socks. Just a few hints and tips that I think are helpful. So one of the things that many people who love toe-up socks always say is that it's very good for making sure that you get the most out of that marvellous skein. And it really is. If you have a beautiful skein of sock yarn and you want to make sure that you use every last yard, divide your yarn in half before you start. I often feel that people sort of look at me with this horrified look that I'm expecting them to take precious knitting time and wind a second ball, but actually just weigh it. If you've got good electronic scales, just weigh your skein, knit until you've knit 50% of it, and make sure that you stop just a little bit before so you can do your cast off, else you might end up with a slightly shorter second sock, and then you can work on your second sock, and you know that you'll have maximum length from that one delicious skein. Another sort of useful piece of information, and I'll pop all of this up on the website, but there's a great tutorial for two at a time toe up. I know a lot of people struggle to start toe up socks in general, or two at a time toe up. So Heidi Bears, who's actually a fellow South African, Joe knows her well, I think. She has an excellent tutorial with some really, really good photos. And while we're talking about casting on, even if you're just casting on for one at a time, which is my preferred method, it's far too much tangle going on with two at a time, but each to their own, is don't use a knot. I used to use a slip knot all the time for my cast-ons, but I've stopped. And it's been really, really good, because you don't want a knot in your toe, and all you need to do is actually just rest the yarn over the needles, and that will make a really big difference when you're doing your magic loop, your Judy's Magic cast on or your figure 8 cast on, and there's lots of different methods. And then I suppose the other two main things that I was going to talk about is experimenting with new toes. I think we're more inclined to experiment with toes from the top down. I suppose it's one of those things that you're getting to the end and you think, oh, what can I do to make this fit my foot a little bit better or be a bit more interesting? But don't be afraid to experiment with different toes from the toe up. The standard wedge shape doesn't generally suit everybody. And if you want to read an interesting article, sort of toot my own horn here a bit, but I just wrote a masterclass technique piece for The Knitter, which I believe is out in issue 83, about toes. And you can use all of those toes, top down or toe up, and there's lots of detailed instructions. So give that a try. And then the last bit, and I suppose if you've finished, you've already passed this hurdle. And if you're about to finish, don't get caught short with a cast off that's too tight. It's really the last thing you want. So many people will advocate Judy's surprisingly stretchy bind off, and it is very stretchy and it is very good for the top of your socks. I find it a bit frilly for my liking, and that's just my personal preference. It might be the way that I do the method. And if you do find that this really stretchy cast off sort of gives a little bit of a frilly edge that you don't like, try the Elizabeth Zimmerman sewn bind off. I know I advocate this for everything, but I suppose when you find something that works, stick with it. So my top tip for casting off is the Elizabeth Zimmerman sewn bind off. It's absolutely brilliant.
Oh, super. I think after we talked about it last time, I had a message or a comment from, I think it was PG Knitting Nurse on Ravelry, but that could be incorrect. This is just purely from memory, who said that if you do the surprisingly stretchy bind off inside out, it's not as frilly.
Oh, interesting. Okay, that's worth trying. Very good. Oh, you learn something new every day.
Indeed. That's why we love the podcast, because we get lots of knowledge.
Indeed. Yeah. So I think that's it. Oh, and then I'm going to pop up a whole list of random resources on my blog. I do try to do tutorials, but I also think that if there's really good resources out there, why replicate them when you can just link to them and make sure that people are getting access to those. So that will be up on the blog for you when this podcast goes live. I'm sure Jo will chase me with a big stick and remind me when she's going to put the podcast up. And that's that for Toe Up Socks, I think.
Brilliant. Thanks, Claire. And you have been adding, as we've been going along and you've been writing your own blogs, you have been adding these resources to the thread in Ravelry.
Yes.
Super. So if when Claire writes new blog posts, she does put them up in there as well. So if you don't follow her on her blog, and I recommend you do because it's just the easiest way of doing it, and you get all of her other good stuff as well, like Caught My Eye, which is just a massive exercise in enabling. You can subscribe to that by email and you'll get it straight to your inbox. But if you don't want to do that, then check it out in the group on Ravelry.
Yep.
Super. Thanks very much for that, Claire.
Thank you.
Just as a little addendum to that last section on Toe Up Socks, it's actually issue 82 of the Knitter that has all of the toes in it. So we wouldn't want you to miss out on that. So just to let you know, it's issue 82, not issue 83 as Claire previously thought. Also, if you've just been inspired to try Toe Up Socks after a month of general sock enabling in that direction, Claire also has a coupon code for her Elgin socks at the moment, the details for which are on her blog over at www.yarnandpointysticks.com. I will link to that in the show notes for you, and you can get all the details of where to get your money off code for Elgin, which are a really quick pair of ankle socks knitted in Aran weight yarn, super snuggly. I've definitely got plans for a pair of those in some lovely yarns from the plain Mobbly Aran that I've got kicked up in my bedroom yarn display. So you'll be seeing some of those from me soon, and from other people I know that have knit it. It's gone down really well. So for the Elgin pattern and your coupon code, get yourself over to Yarn and Pointy Sticks blog. Well, you've had an hour of me and various other special guests, so I'm afraid that's all we've got time for this week. And there are some very exciting things coming up in the podcast, and the schedule will remain compressed for the time being until I get us back onto the timeline after all the crazy that's been happening around here recently. Look forward in the next few episodes to us starting the Afterthought Heel sock for March, which the thread for that is open already, and we'll be talking about all things to do with Afterthought Heels and self-striping yarn, which I love. And there's also an interview coming up with the utterly fabulous Stephen West. So look forward to more details on that over the next week or so, and have a lovely week. Happy crafting. Speak to you all again soon. Thanks for listening. Bye. You've been listening to the Shinybees podcast, a podcast for those who like their knitting, comedy and yarn in equally large measures. If you'd like to get in contact with me, you can do so via the blog, or I'm Shinybees on Ravelry, Instagram, Twitter, Pinterest and Facebook. You can email me at shinybeesinfo@gmail.com. Music for this episode is provided by Music Alley, and it is Adam and the Water Boys and I Need a Drink.
I need a drink.